I am Amani Washington, and I am 32 years old. Just yesterday, I said my final goodbyes to my husband Marcus. He was a soldier, and he was my entire world. The morning after his burial, I returned home to find my in-laws dismantling the locks on my house. My father-in-law, Jeremiah, met my gaze, his eyes as frigid as the November downpour that soaked my somber attire. "Only blood family remains," he declared. "Amani, your time here has concluded." I simply stood there, observing them pack my life into sodden cardboard containers on the lawn. They anticipated my breakdown, my plea for mercy, but they underestimated the woman Marcus had chosen. I met Jeremiah's gaze directly and stated, "You've overlooked one crucial detail." Before I recount my subsequent actions and how I reclaimed what they attempted to seize, share your viewing location in the comments below. Please also remember to like and subscribe if you have ever had to fight for what rightfully belongs to you. They perceived me as merely a grieving widow. They failed to recognize me as a queen. The rain was relentless, a sky seemingly weeping in solidarity, washing away the pretense of sympathy from the funeral. I was utterly spent, a weariness that permeated my very being, far beyond the reach of sleep. Marcus was gone. The ceremony itself was a hazy recollection of uniforms, folded flags, forced embraces from acquaintances, and the stoic, almost triumphant expressions of his family. My car's engine fell silent, leaving the driveway in a profound stillness, punctuated only by the drumming rain and another sound, a grating metallic scrape. I looked up, my heart seizing. Beneath the dim porch light, a stranger was drilling into the deadbolt of my front door. My front door, the very one Marcus and I had painted a glossy black just last summer. Standing beside the locksmith, holding a large black umbrella, was Trevor. Trevor, my sister-in-law Denise's husband, the polished financial advisor who always viewed our home as a disposable asset. He saw me and showed no reaction, merely offering a thin, predatory smile. "Imani," he said, his tone unnervingly casual, as if he'd been expecting me. "You've returned." I exited the car, the rain instantly plastering my hair to my face. "Trevor, what is happening? Who is this man?" The drilling ceased. The locksmith, clearly uncomfortable, shifted his gaze between us. The front door creaked open, not by the locksmith, but by Jeremiah Covington, my father-in-law. He stood silhouetted in the doorway, bathed in the warm interior light, attired in his Sunday best, as if he were the sole proprietor. Beside him, her pearl necklace clutched tightly, stood my mother-in-law, Rosalind. "He is here under our directive," Jeremiah boomed, his voice designed for commanding attention, accustomed to asserting absolute authority. I gripped my car keys so tightly they dug into my palm. "This is my home, Marcus and I. Marcus is no longer with us." Jeremiah cut me off, stepping onto the porch, forcing me to look up at him. He was a substantial man, always eager to emphasize his presence. The property, the assets, everything now reverts to the blood family. This is a Covington affair, not a Washington one. Rosalind nodded, her face a mask of carefully constructed grief. "It is the proper course of action, Imani. We must safeguard our son's legacy." Safeguard his legacy? I stared at them, the exhaustion now giving way to a cold, surging fury at being barred from my home the day after his funeral. Trevor finally spoke, stepping closer, his voice laced with feigned reason. "We are merely securing the property, Amani. Legally, with Marcus deceased, his portion of the estate is in probate. And as his father," he gestured towards Jeremiah, "he is the executor. We simply cannot afford complications." "Complications," I echoed, my voice flat. "You mean me?" Jeremiah stepped past the locksmith, invading my personal space. The scent of his expensive, musky cologne mingled with the damp air. Let me be perfectly clear so there is no misunderstanding, only blood relations. Your presence here is no longer required. That was the precise moment the line was irrevocably drawn. My belongings, I said, my voice trembling, not with sorrow, but with an all-consuming rage. Where are my things? We have been remarkably efficient, Rosalind stated, stepping onto the porch. She avoided my eyes, her gaze directed towards the lawn near the curb. I followed her line of sight. There by the street, exposed to the downpour, were 3 large cardboard boxes. My laptop bag rested precariously on top, its main zipper partially agape. You put my things outside. Well, we couldn't simply leave them inside, dear, Rosalind replied, as if explaining something to a child. We need to commence the estate inventory immediately. Then Denise, my sister-in-law, materialized in the doorway. She was draped in my favorite silk robe, the one Marcus had gifted me for our anniversary in Atlanta. She carried the final box. Oh, you've arrived, she announced, her voice dripping with manufactured surprise. She assessed me from head to toe, taking in my rain-soaked funeral attire. You look dreadful. She walked to the edge of the porch and extended the box. Almost forgot this one. She neither handed it to me nor set it down. Instead, she inverted it, its contents cascading onto the wet grass. My toiletries, my notebooks, and landing face down in a muddy puddle, our wedding photograph. The large, silver-framed image from our mantelpiece. I stood frozen, staring at Marcus's smiling face, now obscured by mud. Denise, I finally screamed, the name tearing from my throat. What? She snapped back, dropping the empty box. It's just stuff. Trevor says, Denise continued, that none of this is legally yours anyway. Your marriage contract is void now that my brother is deceased. You are not family. You are simply the widow. Trevor placed a seemingly supportive hand on his wife's shoulder, the picture of the dutiful husband integrating into the strong black family structure. She's correct, Amani. The legal standing is unambiguous. As the widow of a marriage that produced no offspring, your claim is, at best, tenuous. We are simply getting ahead of the necessary paperwork. Tenuous, I whispered. I looked at the shattered frame. I looked at the new, gleaming brass deadbolt resting on the porch railing, poised to replace me. They all stared at me. Jeremiah, Rosalind, Denise, Trevor, the 4 harbingers of my personal apocalypse. They waited, anticipating my wails, my descent to my knees in the mud, my begging for shelter, for mere scraps from my own table. They saw a 32-year-old woman, broken and alone, and in their minds, utterly penniless. Jeremiah let out a sigh of performative patience. Go, Amani, go to a friend's. We will notify you if we discover anything else that is exclusively yours. I remained motionless. The rain felt icy, but my blood ran hot. I lifted my chin, my gaze sweeping past Denise in my robe, past Trevor with his fabricated legal documents, and fixed directly on the patriarch. I met his eyes. You forgot one thing, I said. My voice, no longer trembling, was now imbued with steely resolve. Jeremiah frowned. Forgot what? The car. The car is leased in my name. Did you forget that as well? No, I replied, pulling my phone from my coat pocket. The screen illuminated my face. You forgot that I am the one who calls 911. Trevor's smug smile faltered. What? You're calling the police? We're family. No, I stated, my thumb hovering over the call icon. You just made that abundantly clear. You are intruders, and I am reporting a home invasion and trespassing on my property. Jeremiah's face contorted with rage. You would dare? He hissed, taking a step toward me. Do it, Amani, Denise taunted, crossing her arms, still adorned in my robe. Call them. Tell them how you're trespassing on Covington property. See who they believe. Trevor placed a cautionary hand on Jeremiah's arm. Now, let's not escalate this. Amani, you are upset. You are grieving. You don't know what you're saying. I know precisely what I'm saying, I retorted, my thumb pressing the green call icon. I lifted the phone to my ear. Yes, I need to report a break-in in progress at 427 Juniper Rise. There are 4 individuals, one of whom has hired a locksmith, attempting to illegally bar me from my home. Rosalind gasped, clutching her pearls. She actually did it, Jeremiah. She's called the police on family. Within minutes, the flashing blue and red lights sliced through the grey downpour. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the curb directly behind my vehicle. The in-laws stiffened. The locksmith had already retreated, his tools clutched, looking as though he wished he could vanish. 2 officers emerged. One was an older, stout white officer, Officer Miller. The other was a younger, sharp-featured black officer, Officer Reed. Officer Miller approached, his hand resting on his belt. Ma'am, sirs, we received a call regarding a disturbance, a break-in. Before I could respond, Jeremiah stepped forward, adopting his persona of a concerned patriarch. Officer, thank you for your prompt arrival, but this is a regrettable misunderstanding. Trevor immediately slid beside him, exuding smooth confidence. Officers, my name is Trevor Hayes. I am the family's financial advisor. He gestured towards Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah Covington. This was his son's residence. His son Marcus, a decorated soldier, was just laid to rest yesterday. Officer Miller's expression softened slightly. Our condolences, sir, but this lady, he indicated me, called 911. She did, Trevor chimed in, his voice laced with feigned sympathy. This is Amani, Marcus's widow. She is, as you can imagine, quite distraught. We simply came over this morning to secure the property. We are protecting my father-in-law's assets. I stood tall, refusing to let them paint me as hysterical. Officer, I stated, my voice clear and cutting through the rain. My name is Amani Washington. This is my home. These individuals, I pointed directly at them, are my in-laws. They have discarded my belongings onto the lawn and hired this man to change the locks, thereby locking me out the day after my husband's funeral. Officer Reed, the black officer, surveyed the sodden boxes on the lawn. He glanced at the wedding photograph lying face down in the mud. Then he returned his gaze to Trevor and Jeremiah. Sir, Officer Reed said to Jeremiah, is what she is stating accurate? Are you attempting to deny this woman access to her residence? It is not her residence, officer, Jeremiah boomed. It is Covington family property. My son is deceased. I am the executor. She has no legal standing to be here. We are the ones being trespassed upon. She is. Trevor nodded swiftly. It's a probate matter, officer. Purely civil. We are merely trying to prevent her from damaging or removing assets belonging to the estate. We were attempting to handle this discreetly, but she became emotional and called you. Officer Miller sighed, his shoulders slumping. It was evident he wished this messy domestic call would conclude. Sir, do you possess any documentation to substantiate your claims that this is your property and not hers? Absolutely, officer, Trevor responded, clearly prepared. He unzipped a sleek black leather briefcase I had only ever seen him carry to his so-called investment gatherings. Shielding it from the rain with his umbrella, he withdrew a plastic-sleeved folder. I have the preliminary estate documents right here and a copy of the original deed. He presented a laminated sheet to Officer Miller. You will note the property was initially secured by Jeremiah Covington, and his son Marcus was added to the title later as a co-borrower. not a co-owner. With Marcus's passing, sole ownership reverts to the primary signatory, Jeremiah. It's standard procedure. Officer Miller took the paper, shining his flashlight on it, wiping rain from the plastic. He squinted at the text. I tried to discern it from my position. It appeared alarmingly official, bearing signatures and what looked like a county seal. My heart hammered against my ribs. What was this? Marcus and I had signed so many documents at closing. Could this be true? Well, Mum, Officer Miller said, returning the paper to Trevor. He turned to me, his tone shifting from neutral to impatient. This appears quite straightforward. This document, which seems to be a legal deed, lists Mr. Jeremiah Covington as the primary owner. It seems you might be the one trespassing, not them. That's impossible, I protested, my voice rising in panic. That's a lie. Marcus and I purchased this house together with a VA loan. You lived here, Amani, Jeremiah interjected, his voice dripping with that disingenuous, patronizing patience. Because my son was generous. Now, I am being generous by allowing you to depart without further embarrassment. We are the victims here. Ma'am, Officer Miller said, taking a firm step toward me, positioning himself between me and the porch. This is a civil matter, but this document here, he tapped his notebook, is compelling. I cannot permit you to remain here and harass these individuals. They are grieving. You need to collect your boxes and find alternative accommodation for the night. You are welcome to pursue this in court on Monday if you disagree. Alternative accommodation? I looked at their faces. Denise was smirking, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. Rosalind appeared relieved that her Christian duty of feigned concern for me had officially concluded. Trevor merely observed me, his eyes cold and calculating, waiting for my inevitable collapse. My mind raced. How? How did he possess that document? A forged deed? Was such a thing even conceivable? I looked at Trevor's smug, victorious expression, the look of a man who had just won. And then, as clearly as if he were standing beside me in the rain, I heard Marcus's voice. It was a memory from just 6 months prior. We were in the kitchen late one night. Marcus was reviewing some investment papers. Trevor had attempted to get him to sign for his father's company. Marcus had laughed, but it was a hollow, cold sound. Babe, he had said, holding the paper up to the light. Never trust Trevor, especially with documents. He had forged his own college transcripts to get Denise to date him. He'd sell his own mother for $1, and he'd produce a fake receipt to prove it. A fake receipt, I snapped back to the present. My breathing, which had been rapid and shallow, suddenly deepened. The document Trevor presented was a fabrication, a sophisticated lie, a meticulously prepared deception, but a lie nonetheless. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a family dispute fueled by grief. This was a meticulously planned subjugation. They had been anticipating this. Ma'am, Officer Miller prompted again, his voice sharp. Did you hear me? You need to vacate the premises immediately, or I will be compelled to escort you. I was cornered. The law, embodied by Officer Miller, was siding with the composed white man in the suit, holding the official-looking paper. My in-laws stood as a united front of animosity, masquerading as mourning. I was merely the overwrought black widow, stranded in the rain with muddy boxes for solace. They all believed I was defeated. They all believed I was left with nothing. I looked past Miller's dismissive countenance. I looked past Trevor's triumphant gaze. I met the eyes of Officer Reed, the black officer who had been standing silently in the background, merely observing. He was watching me intently, his expression unreadable. This was their strategic maneuver. Now it was my turn. I took a deep breath, the cold rain stinging my lungs. Officer Miller had dismissed me. He was an impassable barrier, but Officer Reed, he was still watching. He hadn't uttered a word, yet his eyes absorbed everything. The mud on the wedding photograph, Denise's smirk, Trevor's expensive briefcase. They all believed I was beaten. I turned away from Officer Miller's impatient glare and locked eyes with Officer Reed. Officer Reed, I said, my voice steady and clear. I understand this is a civil matter, but it is also a matter of fraud. Trevor stiffened. Officer Miller began to interject. Ma'am, I already told you. I ignored Miller, maintaining my focus on Reed. That man, I pointed directly at Trevor, is Trevor Hayes, the family's financial advisor. Before you accept his official document as irrefutable fact, I suggest you run his name, Trevorhayes. This is slander. Trevor snapped, his voice suddenly an octave higher. It's irrelevant. I don't think it is, I replied to Reed. Run his name for any outstanding warrants. Specifically, I recommend you check the state of Georgia. Inquire with your dispatch if he has any ongoing investigations concerning investment fraud and forgery. The colour drained from Trevor's face. It was not a subtle shift. It was a sudden, sickly pallor. His confident posture faltered. Denise stopped smirking and looked at her husband, her eyes wide with bewilderment. Trevor, what is she talking about? Trevor merely licked his lips, his gaze darting towards Officer Miller, his supposed shield. She's hysterical. This is a pathetic attempt to distract you. Is it? I asked Officer Reed. That document, I pointed to the paper in Miller's hand, is a forgery, much like his credentials. This, I held up my phone, its screen brilliantly illuminated against the dark, rain-swept evening, is the truth. It's my email archive from our closing attorney 2 years ago. I have the executed digital copy of our closing documents right here. Officer Reed stepped forward, taking the phone from my hand. Officer Miller reluctantly leaned in to look over his shoulder. Officer, please open the file labeled Washington Closing Final, I instructed. You will see it is a loan from the Department of Veterans Affairs, a VA loan. You will see both names on that loan, Marcus Washington and Amani Washington, and if you scroll to page 4, you will see the title application. Reed silently scrolled, his face bathed in the screen's glow. He examined the PDF. He saw the official VA letterhead. He saw the signatures. He saw the date. I looked at Jeremiah, whose face had transformed from smugness to stone. I looked at Trevor, who was now visibly sweating in the frigid rain. My name, I said, my voice echoing in the sudden hush, is on the title. My name is on the loan. We both signed. This is our home, not his. Officer Reed handed the phone back to me. His expression was grim. He glanced at Officer Miller, who merely shook his head, clearly frustrated by the unfolding situation. All right, Officer Miller announced loudly, stepping to the center of the porch. We are finished here. We have conflicting documents. We cannot determine ownership. He pointed a thick finger at the locksmith. You pack up your tools. You are not changing this lock tonight. He then turned to Jeremiah and Trevor. Sir, you cannot remove this woman from the premises. You will have to leave. Leave? Rosalind shrieked. This is our son's home. And Ma'am, Miller said, looking at me, we cannot arrest them for trespassing on what they genuinely believe to be their property. This is a civil dispute. You all need to secure legal counsel and proceed to court. The locksmith, appearing visibly relieved, quickly packed his kit and hurried to his van. Jeremiah stood there, shaking, his face darkening to a furious shade of red. He had been bested. He had been publicly humiliated in front of law enforcement. He glared at me, his eyes promising retribution. Fine, he spat, his voice low and menacing. You believe you're clever, Amani. You've won this minor skirmish. He pulled Rosalind and Denise towards his vehicle. But we'll see you at the lawyer's office tomorrow. We'll see you for the reading of the will, and when that will is read, I will own this house and you will walk away with nothing. The house fell silent, unnervingly so. For 3 days since the police departed, I had been living within a fortress of quiet. I had reinforced the locks myself. I sat in Marcus's favorite armchair, wrapped in his army-issue blanket, simply breathing. The shadow of the will reading loomed, yet Jeremiah had made no further move. I knew they were formulating a new plan. I just couldn't fathom what it was. I sat at my laptop, attempting to force myself to work, to find some semblance of stability amidst the wreckage of my life. My company, I Am Logistics, was my secret, my shared project with Marcus. It demanded my attention. As I was reviewing a shipping manifest, an email alert popped up. It was from Atlanta Federal Trust, our mortgage lender. The subject line contained 2 words, final notice. My blood turned to ice. I clicked it open. The text was stark, devoid of any sentimentality. Dear Ms. Washington, following a review of your account status and the unfortunate passing of the primary loan holder, a significant change in your financial profile has been identified. Atlanta, the Federal Trust is enacting the acceleration provision within your loan agreement. The entirety of the outstanding sum, precisely $247,000, is now immediately payable. Should the full payment not be received within 48 hours, foreclosure proceedings will commence without delay. 48 hours, the entire balance. This was inconceivable. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my cell phone, barely able to manage the unlock sequence. We had never, not once, missed a payment. Never. This had to be a clerical error. I navigated the sterile, automated voice prompts of the bank's system. Representative, I demanded. I need to speak with a representative. Finally, a man with a clearly weary tone answered. Atlanta Federal Trust, David speaking. How may I assist you? My name is Amani Washington, I stated, striving to maintain a level voice. My account number is 477 Juniper Rise. I've just received a notice of foreclosure. This is a significant misstatement. My payments are completely up to date. I could hear the sound of typing. Yes, M. Washington. I see the account here, he replied, his voice professional but devoid of emotion. I am truly sorry for your loss, madam. We were informed of Mr. Marcus Washington's passing. Yes, he was my husband, I confirmed, my patience fraying. But I am the joint owner. My name is also on the loan. I am fully capable of continuing the payments. There is no justification for accelerating the loan. A brief silence ensued. Madam, David began, his voice hesitant, the loan was predominantly secured by Mr. Washington's military compensation. With that income stream no longer active, we were compelled to reevaluate the co-borrower's capacity to meet the obligations. My capacity? I have my own income. I own a business. Yes, madam, our underwriters did review that, he stated. We received a comprehensive financial update. Let me review the file. Yes, it was furnished by the financial advisor for Covington Estates, a Mr. Trevor Hayes. The name struck me with the force of a physical blow. Trevor Hayes, I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. What update did he provide? Well, David stated clearly, reading from his screen, Mr. Hayes submitted documentation indicating that your personal declared income from the previous year was insufficient to service the loan independently. He also provided a profit and loss statement for your registered enterprise. I Am Logistics, my company, I stated, gripping the phone tighter. What did he say about my company? According to the documents we received, David continued, I Am Logistics LLC has reported no net profit for the past 3 fiscal quarters and is listed as, let me see, non-operational and insolvent. Madam, without Mr. Washington's income and with your own business showing no profitability, you lack a verifiable income source. The bank cannot assume the risk of an unsecured loan. Acceleration is standard procedure. I fell silent. I couldn't draw a breath. Zero profit, insolvent, non-operational. It was a falsehood, a devastating, meticulously planned, and remarkably effective lie. Trevor had approached the bank covertly, leveraging his position as the family's financial consultant to portray me as a destitute widow. He had fabricated financial reports for my own company. He wasn't merely aiming to claim the house during the will's reading, he was ensuring that by the time the will was officially read, I would already be without a home, utterly defeated, and desperate enough to sign whatever he placed before me. Miss Washington, David, the bank representative, inquired into the silence. I'm still here, I managed to respond. The notice remains valid, he stated, his professional demeanor reasserting itself. You have 48 hours to remit the full sum. I sincerely regret this situation, but this is a matter of business. The line disconnected. I stared blankly at the wall. They had just initiated hostilities and they had fired the opening salvo. I remained seated, the silent phone in my hand, the echo of David's pronouncement still resonating in my ears. Insolvent, zero profit, non-operational. It was a calculated financial assassination. Trevor had constructed a flawless narrative of a helpless, impoverished widow. He had manufactured the crisis. And precisely on cue, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. The name displayed was Rosalind. My blood didn't just turn cold, it froze. This was no mere coincidence. This was the second phase of the attack. First the blunt force and now the soothing, concerned voice. I let it ring twice, my mind racing, piecing together their strategy. They had triggered the foreclosure, waited just long enough to allow panic to take root, and now they were calling, offering salvation. I activated the speakerphone, placing the device on my desk. Hello, Rosalind. Amani. Oh, thank heavens you answered, child. Her voice dripped with a syrupy pretense of sympathy. It was the exact tone she employed at church gatherings, the one that signaled an impending judgment disguised as a benevolent act. I was just sitting here, my heart absolutely breaking for you. Oh, child, I am so worried. Are you? I asked, my own voice flat and lifeless. Of course I am, we all are, I just heard. Her voice cracked with mock sorrow. Oh, it's just the most dreadful news. I played along, my knuckles turning white where I gripped the armrest. What news is that? The bank, she whispered conspiratorially, as if revealing a grave secret. Trevor, you know he keeps such a close watch on all the family's financial affairs. He's such a blessing. He saw the notice from Atlanta Federal Trust. Oh dear heavens, foreclosure! After just burying my precious son, it's simply too much. It is too much for one person to endure. So they contacted the bank first, I mused. They set the trap, and now they're pretending to have just discovered it. He told us, Rosalind continued, her voice catching in what sounded like a practiced sob. He said, Mother, poor Amani is going to be cast out onto the street. And Jeremiah, well, Amani, my husband, has such a large Christian heart. I almost scoffed. Jeremiah's heart was as hard and small as a diamond. He was terribly upset with you, Amani, she stated, her tone shifting subtly, a hint of reprimand creeping in. Calling the authorities on your own family during your time of mourning. It was profoundly embarrassing. It truly wounded him. Get to the point, Rosalind, I interjected. The false sympathy snapped back into place. The point, dear, is that Jeremiah, despite his hurt feelings, does not wish to see his son's widow rendered homeless. It just, It wouldn't look appropriate. People will talk. It would tarnish Marcus's memory. She was concerned with appearances, naturally. So, she cajoled, Jeremiah wants to assist you. He is willing to overlook your outburst. Forgive me. I repeated the word, the taste of it like ashes in my mouth. Yes, dear. He is the sole individual capable of resolving this. He possesses a very, very strong connection with the bank's president. They play golf together. He can make this entire predicament vanish with a single telephone call. I waited. I knew what was coming. The price. One call, Rosalind stated, and he can instruct them to halt the foreclosure. He can arrange for them to restructure the loan under his name, naturally to safeguard the family's interests. All he requires is a simple demonstration of your good faith. Good faith? I inquired. That's correct. He simply needs to be assured that you are ready to cease all this conflict. He needs to know you will be part of the solution, not the problem. Trevor has already prepared a brief document. It's merely a formality. A quitclaim deed. He called it a quitclaim deed, the legal instrument that would relinquish any and all claims I held to the house, transferring it entirely to Jeremiah. It's just a small piece of paper, Amani, she purred. You sign it, granting the estate complete control. Once Jeremiah possesses that, he will have the legal standing to make the call to the bank on your behalf. He will save the house. It is what Marcus would have desired. And what becomes of me? I asked. Well, he is a generous man. He would, of course, permit you to reside there for a short period until you regain your footing. You would have a roof over your head, all thanks to his magnanimity. Isn't that marvelous? Trevor can be here in an hour with the paperwork. He emphasized, you must sign it this evening before the bank's 48-hour deadline expires. You see, the trap had been fully sprung. They were attempting to panic me into destitution, then offer me salvation in exchange for my signature. He is rescuing you, Amani, she concluded. All you need to do is say yes. I gazed at the speakerphone. Rosalind's cloying voice lingered in the air. All you need to do is say yes, Amani. He is saving you. Saving me. The word reverberated in my mind. It was the same word Marcus had used, but he had intended something entirely different. My thoughts drifted back 3 months. It was late past midnight. Marcus had just returned from a lengthy, acrimonious argument at his father's office. He found me working at the kitchen table. He looked weary, older than his 33 years. He sat down opposite me and slid a small black USB drive across the table. Babe, I need you to hold on to this, he said, his voice low. It's everything, all the ledgers, all the contracts, all the loan agreements for Covington Logistics. I've copied it all. Marcus, why? I had asked, bewildered. This is his company. He met my gaze, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. Because he's running it into the ground, Amani. He's managing it incorrectly. He's using new contracts to settle old debts. It's a house of cards. He's drowning. He pushed the drive closer to me. You're a logistics strategist. You'll understand what you're looking at. Just keep it safe for me. Keep it safe, just in case. Just in case. I snapped back to the present. Rosalind was still on the line, breathing softly, awaiting my grateful assent. Amani, dear, are you there? I finally understood. This was not a rescue. This was extortion. This was an ambush. They had engineered a fabricated crisis, my insolvency, to compel me to relinquish my rights to the house. They weren't concerned about my 48-hour deadline. They were concerned about their own. They were the ones facing insolvency, not me. They weren't attempting to preserve the house. They were trying to seize it before the will was read. They needed it. They were desperate. And they assumed I was too panicked, too broke, to discern the truth. They believed I would sign anything for shelter. Amani, did you hear me? Trevor is on his way. He has the documents. Rosalind's voice was growing shrill, impatient. I retrieved the receiver from the speakerphone. I held the cool plastic to my ear. "Rosalind," I said, my voice so calm, so devoid of panic it even surprised me. "Tell Trevor not to bother." A confused silence emanated from the other end. "What? What do you mean, Amani? You must sign. This is your only chance, the deadline, child, the bank." "That is not your concern," I stated, my voice like ice. "You, Jeremiah, Denise, and Trevor, you have made a grave miscalculation. Do not contact this number again." "But Amani, you are throwing your life away. You'll be on the streets." "Goodbye, Rosalind." I hung up the phone. The silence in the house was palpable, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of focused intent. They believed I was insolvent. They believed I was broke. They believed I was a grieving, foolish young woman. They had underestimated me for so long that their entire scheme was predicated upon it. I turned back to my laptop. The menacing email from Atlanta Federal Trust remained open. Full outstanding balance due $247,000. 48 hours. I closed the email. I opened a new, secure browser tab. I did not access the small, local business bank where Trevor had discovered my fictitious insolvent account. He was an amateur. I am a professional logistician. I establish redundancies. I navigated to the international banking institution that managed all my genuine shipping contracts. I logged into the actual banking portal for IM Logistics, the one Trevor Hayes, with all his financial acumen, had no knowledge of. The balance page loaded. It was not zero. It was not non-operational. It was healthy. It was robust. I opened another tab. I logged into my Atlanta Federal Trust mortgage account. The accelerated balance stared back at me. $247,000. I clicked Make Payment. My fingers moved swiftly across the keys. I selected my actual business account as the source. I clicked Pay Other Amount. I entered the full outstanding balance, $247,000. A confirmation box appeared. "Are you certain you wish to pay this amount in full?" They coveted my house. They intended to seize the last tangible asset Marcus and I had built together. They aimed to exploit his memory to coerce me, to break me, to discard me as refuse. I looked at the screen. "You'll be on the streets," Rosalind's strident voice echoed in my mind. I pressed Confirm Payment. The screen buffered for 1 second, then 2, and then new text appeared in vibrant green letters. "Thank you. Your payment has been processed. Your loan balance is $0. I closed the laptop. They had just expended their most potent ammunition, and now they were utterly unaware that I was impervious. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an email notification. I opened it. The sender was Atlanta Federal Trust. The subject line read, "Mortgage Account Update." I opened it. "Dear Miss Washington, we are pleased to confirm receipt of your payment in the full amount of $247,000. Your mortgage loan has been paid in full. The lien on your property will be released, and the deed will be mailed to you. Thank you for your business." Paid in full. It was mine. I leaned back in my chair and gazed at a photograph of Marcus and me on the desk. He was smiling, his arm around me at a baseball game. "They thought they could intimidate me, Marcus," I whispered to the picture. "They believed I was weak. They don't know whom you married. I'm prepared for them." As I spoke, another email alert chimed. My stomach tightened. This one was new. It was from a sender I didn't recognize. Patterson, Crow, and Liddell, attorneys at law. The subject line read, "Official Notice, Reading of the Last Will and Testament of Marcus T. Washington." My eyes scanned the body of the text. "You are hereby summoned to our offices tomorrow morning, November 14th, at 10 o'clock sharp." The trap had failed, so tomorrow they would attempt the execution. The law offices of Patterson, Crowe, and Liddell were precisely as one might expect. Dark wood, leather-bound books that appeared untouched, and an atmosphere of expensive, suffocating silence. The conference room carried a faint aroma of aged paper and lemon polish. I sat alone at one end of the long, polished mahogany table. At the opposite end, the Covington family convened as a unified front. Jeremiah at the head of the table resembled a monarch holding court, his thick fingers tapping rhythmically on the wood. Rosalind sat beside him, dabbing at her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. Next to her were Denise and Trevor, whispering to each other. They had not uttered a word to me since my arrival. They simply observed me, their eyes reflecting a mixture of pity and disdain. They still believed their stratagem had succeeded. They assumed I was arriving from a residence that was no longer mine. They thought I was here to face official pronouncement of my ruin. The attorney, a severe-looking man named Patterson, had not yet entered. We were merely waiting. Denise leaned toward her mother, her voice a stage whisper clearly intended to carry across the table. "Look at her," Denise declared, making no pretense of quiet. Still pretending she belongs here, sitting there in her little funeral suit. It's just pathetic. Rosalind shushed her, though without any real conviction. "Denise, darling, be charitable. She's distraught." "She's about to be penniless," Trevor chimed in, loud enough for me to hear. He adjusted his silk tie and smiled at his wife. "Just be patient, dear. The lawyer is merely retrieving the final documentation. It will all be concluded shortly." Jeremiah finally addressed me, his gaze heavy and cold. He no longer appeared angry. He simply looked content. He resembled a man who had already triumphed in the war and was merely awaiting the official declaration of surrender. "Amani," he stated, his deep voice filling the room. "I trust you have made arrangements for your subsequent steps. I understand this must be challenging, but business is business, and family is family. The law will delineate the distinction between the two." He relished the moment. Arrogance radiated from him in waves. He assumed I was defeated. He believed I had come, cap in hand, only to discover I possessed nothing whatsoever. He had no inkling that I had already settled the mortgage. He was oblivious to the fact that I was the only individual in the room standing on solid ground. They believed they were witnessing a lamb being led to slaughter. They had no conception that they were confined in a room with a lion. The substantial oak door of the conference room opened, and the lawyer, Mr. Patterson, entered. He was a tall, slender man who seemed fashioned from dry parchment and aged leather. He carried a single blue folder, which he placed in the center of the vast table. He offered no apology for his tardiness. He simply sat. "Good morning," he announced, his voice a dry monotone that mirrored his appearance. "We are convened today for the reading of the last will and testament of Mr. Marcus T. Washington. I served as Mr. Washington's personal legal counsel. I shall be concise, as I am certain this is a trying period for all present." He donned a pair of gold-rimmed reading glasses and opened the folder. The rustle of the paper sliding out seemed to amplify in the tense silence. Jeremiah leaned forward, his hands clasped. Trevor had a pen and notepad at the ready, as if preparing to take minutes at a board meeting. Patterson cleared his throat. "I, Marcus T. Washington," he began to read, "being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking any and all former wills and codicils." Patterson paused, peering over his glasses at the assembled individuals. "I shall dispense with the customary legal formalities and proceed directly to the appointments and bequests." He looked back down at the page. "First, I appoint as the executor of my estate my father, Jeremiah Covington." A sharp, satisfied nod from Jeremiah. Trevor reached over and patted his father-in-law's shoulder. This was step one. As to my personal effects, Patterson continued, to my sister Denise Hayes, I bequeath my collection of classic jazz records in the hope that she will finally acquire an appreciation for something with soul. Denise's expression tightened. It was a clear insult from Marcus, a posthumous jab, but she quickly smoothed her features, knowing the true prize was yet to come. To my mother, Rosalind Covington, I leave my personal photo albums so that she may recall my face. Rosalind pressed the handkerchief to her unmoistened eyes. Oh, my sweet, sweet boy. He was so thoughtful. Patterson turned the page. And now regarding the residue of the estate. This was it. This was the moment the entire room had been anticipating. Trevor ceased fiddling with his pen. Jeremiah sat perfectly still. As to all the rest, residue and remainder of my estate, Patterson read, his voice clear and unwavering, be it real, personal, or mixed, of whatever kind and wheresoever situated, of which I may die seized or possessed, or to which I may be in any way entitled at the time of my death. He paused, taking a slow breath. I give, devise, and bequeath entirely, solely and absolutely to my beloved father, Jeremiah Covington. The words landed on the table like a judge's gavel. Silence. Rosalind let out a long, shuddering sigh. It was not a sigh of grief. It was a sigh of pure, profound financial relief. Denise's hand flew to her mouth, but she couldn't conceal the ecstatic, venomous smile in her eyes. She grabbed Trevor's arm, her knuckles turning white. She looked directly at me, her gaze screaming, you lose everything. Trevor himself let his professional facade crumble. A wide, smug grin spread across his face. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. His scheme had worked. The fabricated financials at the bank, the pressure, the forged deed, it no longer mattered. The will, the ultimate legal document, had granted them everything, and Jeremiah, my father-in-law, he closed his eyes slowly as if in prayer. When he opened them, they were fixed on me. He was the king. He had just inherited the entire kingdom. He did not smile. He did not need to. His victory was absolute and total. He believed he now owned my house, the one he thought was in foreclosure. He believed he now owned all of Marcus's assets. He was convinced that at this precise moment I was officially homeless and penniless. Nying, it is a significant responsibility, Jeremiah stated, his voice thick with feigned humility, but his eyes gleaming with triumph. A heavy burden, but one I shall gladly bear for my son. I will safeguard his legacy. Rest assured, the estate is in competent, capable hands. All eyes were fixed on me, anticipating a breakdown, a scream, tears, or a protest. I remained motionless, silent, simply waiting. Lawyer Patterson had just finished reading the initial document, but I noticed a second, thinner sheaf of papers tucked away inside the blue folder, untouched. Jeremiah leaned back, a contented sigh escaping his lips. He looked at me, his gaze filled with a chilling final pity. Well, he announced to the entire room, not just me, that appears to be that, a regrettable yet straightforward conclusion. He turned his commanding stare towards the lawyer. Mr. Patterson, I'll have my financial advisor, Mr. Hayes, liaise with you immediately to commence the process of securing the estate's assets, beginning with the residence, naturally. Trevor flashed a rapacious grin, clicking his pen. I'll have the necessary paperwork prepared this afternoon, Jeremiah. We'll start with the house and then move on to the bank accounts. Denise, who had been practically vibrating with suppressed excitement, finally emitted a high-pitched, relieved laugh. Oh, Daddy, this is such a tremendous relief. We were so concerned. Now we can finally manage Marcus's affairs properly. Her gaze locked onto mine, her smile like a venomous dart. I suppose you'll truly need to make those arrangements now, won't you, Amani? I offered no reply, my focus remaining solely on Mr. Patterson. He hadn't moved, nor had he closed the blue folder. He simply observed Jeremiah over the rim of his spectacles, his expression utterly unreadable. "Mr. Coynton," the lawyer's voice, dry and precise, cut through their triumphant atmosphere, "please do not proceed too hastily. I am not yet finished." The smug aura in the room vanished. Jeremiah's heavy brow furrowed. "Not finished? You've read the will. It's concluded. I am the executor. I am the sole beneficiary of the estate." Mr. Patterson corrected him, his voice measured. "You are the beneficiary of the will and the executor of the probate estate. However, Mr. Washington possessed several significant assets which, by law, do not pass through a will." He allowed that to sink in. "These are referred to as non-probate assets. Their distribution is governed by separate legal contracts, and they supersede any instructions contained within the document I have just read." Trevor, the financial advisor, suddenly sat up, leaning forward. "Non-probate assets," he echoed, a flicker of uncertainty in his tone. "You mean like a joint checking account, a 401(k)? Those are usually minor." "Not always," Patterson replied. He reached into the blue folder and withdrew the second, thinner stack of papers. "The first and by far the largest of these assets," he stated, "is Mr. Washington's Service Members Group Life Insurance, the SGLI." The air seemed to drain from the room. Jeremiah's eyes widened. Rosalind let out a small, sharp gasp. They knew precisely what that entailed. This was not a minor account. This was the soldier's payout. Denise's greed was immediate and palpable. She blurted out, "The insurance? How much? How much is it?" Mr. Patterson glanced down at the document. As an active duty soldier who died while in service, Mr. Washington held the maximum coverage permitted by law. The policy's death benefit is $500,000. $500,000, Rosalind whispered, her hand flying to her chest. She looked at Jeremiah, her eyes wide with frantic, sudden elation. This was more than the house. This was more than they had ever envisioned. This was salvation for Jeremiah's struggling company. Jeremiah sat bolt upright. The facade of the grieving father crumbled, replaced by the avaricious glint of a predator. $500,000, he breathed. A broad, triumphant smile spread across his face. And as the executor and sole beneficiary of the estate, that money comes to me. It is part of the estate. "That's correct," Trevor chimed in, nodding vigorously, affirming his father-in-law's claim. "The estate is the beneficiary. It all goes to Jeremiah." "You are incorrect, Mr. Hayes," Patterson stated flatly. "You are completely and utterly wrong." Trevor's smile evaporated. "What?" "The SGLI is a federal policy governed by federal law, not Georgia state probate law," Patterson explained as if to a child. "The proceeds are paid directly to the beneficiary named on the policy's designation form. The will has zero jurisdiction over this money. It does not go to the estate. It does not go to the executor. It goes solely to the person or persons whose name appears on that form." A profound, chilling silence descended. Jeremiah's face stiffened. "And who is that beneficiary? He must have named me his father. I am his blood." "Or me," Rosalind added, her voice trembling. "His mother." Mr. Patterson looked down at the official SGLI designation form in his hand. "I have a certified copy of the designation form right here. It was filed with the Department of Defense 3 months ago, just before his final deployment." He paused, letting the tension stretch to its breaking point. He looked up past the Coyntons, his gaze finally landing on me. "The sole 100% primary beneficiary designated by Marcus T. Washington is his wife, Mrs. Imani Washington." The reaction was instantaneous. "No!" Rosalind shrieked, her voice cracking. "No, that's a lie. He wouldn't." Denise's face flushed a furious, ugly red. $500,000, she screamed, rising so abruptly her chair nearly toppled. To her, that lying gold digger. The will said Daddy gets everything. She tricked him. Trevor turned pale, his professional veneer crumbling. That's impossible. A designation 3 months ago. She must have forced him, coerced him. This is manipulation. We will contest this. Jeremiah didn't yell. He was far worse. He simply stared at me, his eyes burning with a pure, terrifying hatred. He saw $500,000, his money, his company's lifeline, vanish from his grasp and fly across the table to mine. He pointed a thick, trembling finger at me. You, he spat, you did this. You poisoned my son against his own blood. That money is ours. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I simply looked at Mr. Patterson. He nodded once, slid the SGLI confirmation paper from the folder, and pushed it across the long, polished mahogany table. It stopped precisely in front of me. I placed my hand on it. Mine. Trevor's face was ashen. He had been so certain of his legal standing, so confident in his forged documents. No, he yelled, his voice cracking. No, the house, the insurance is one thing, but the will you just read gave all real estate, all property to Jeremiah. The house is ours. He jabbed a finger at me. She can take that blood money, but she is not getting the house. We saw the deed. Jeremiah is the primary owner. Mr. Patterson looked at Trevor with a profound, weary disappointment. He didn't seem angry, just tired of the man's loud, ignorant avarice. Mr. Hayes, Patterson said, his voice cutting through the room like shards of glass, I must ask you to cease attempting to practice law. You are once again completely and fatally mistaken. What are you talking about? Jeremiah growled, his voice low and menacing. He was leaning so far forward his knuckles were white against the table. I am talking about the second non-probate asset, Patterson stated, gesturing towards the house, the residence at 427 Juniper Rise. That property, Mr. Coynton, also does not pass through the will. Trevor just shook his head, sputtering. That's impossible. A house, it's the very definition of a probate asset. It's real property. It is, Patterson agreed. But the title is the supreme document, not the will. The will you heard read? He tapped the old document. Was signed by Marcus Washington on May 10th, 2015. That was before he was married. He then reached into the blue folder and retrieved the last, final single sheet of paper. This, he said, holding it up, is the official deed for the property, filed with the Fulton County Records Office 2 years ago, just 1 week after Mr. and Mrs. Washington were married. Marcus and Amani filed a new deed. He slid the paper onto the table. They changed the ownership. The property was held as joint tenancy with right of survivorship. The Coyntons just stared at the paper. They didn't grasp the legal terminology, but they sensed from Patterson's tone that it was a weapon. What does that mean? Rosalind whispered, her face pale. Patterson looked directly at Jeremiah. It means, Mr. Coynton, that you are not the owner. It means the deed Mr. Hayes showed the police was either obsolete or, more likely, a complete fabrication. Trevor made a small choking sound. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship, Patterson continued in a monotone, is a legal structure. It means that when one co-owner passes away, their share of the property does not go to their estate. It does not enter probate. It is not governed by their will. By operation of law at the very instant of Mr. Marcus Washington's death, his 50% share was automatically and immediately transferred to the other joint tenant. He paused, letting the full weight of his words settle. The house, he concluded, belongs 100% to Mrs. Amani Washington. The will, which bequeathed to you all real property, has no real property to give. You, Mr. Coynton, have inherited nothing but your son's record collection and his old photo albums. The $500,000 is hers. The house is hers. The estate is empty. The conference room fell into a deathly hush. The Cointons were frozen, their faces masks of stunned, grotesque horror. It was Denise who broke first. Her face contorted, the shock morphing into raw, primal rage. "No!" she shrieked, the sound tearing through the quiet office. "No, she's a liar!" She lunged across the table, her hands like claws, attempting to snatch the papers I held. You gold-digging manipulative. He was our brother. That is our family's money. You forced him. You tricked him." Trevor had to grab her by the waist, hauling her back as she thrashed and sobbed. "She gets nothing. We'll sue her." Jeremiah didn't yell. He rose slowly from his chair, trembling, but not from sorrow. It was rage. His face was a dark, dangerous purple. He pointed a thick, shaking finger at me, ignoring his daughter's wails. "You think you've won," he hissed, his voice low and terrifying. "You enjoy that money. You enjoy that house, but you will never know a moment of peace in it. You have that pathetic little company, don't you? I am logistics." He smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever witnessed. "I built the logistics business in this city. I own this city. I will grind your little company into dust. I will ensure you never sign another contract. I will bleed you dry. You will have nothing left. This is not over. This has merely begun." The victory in that conference room was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks, and the sweet taste of justice had already turned to ash. The war had simply shifted its battlefront, moving from the lawyer's office to my own. The headquarters of IM Logistics was a small leased space with 2 desks and a wall of whiteboards. It was my sanctuary. It was the company Marcus and I had built together, the one thing that was entirely ours. And Jeremiah was systematically dismantling it. My phone was pressed tightly to my ear. "Michael, please," I said, striving to maintain a steady, professional tone. "We have handled your West Coast accounts for 18 months. We've never experienced a single delay. You know the quality of our service." On the other end of the line, Michael Henderson, a man I had shared lunches with, sighed. It was a heavy, apologetic sound. "Imani, I know," he said. "You're the most reliable partner I have, but I'm looking at a proposal right now, and I can't ignore it." My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. "A proposal from who, Michael?" "Jeremiah Covington. He called me himself this morning. He's offering to take your entire contract, all the routes, for 30% less than your current rate." 30%, Michael? I'm running a business. My board would have my head if I didn't take that deal. I'm sorry, I have to terminate our agreement. The line clicked and he was gone. I stared at the phone. 30%. It was an impossible figure. There was no profit margin at that rate. It represented a guaranteed loss. Before I could even mark the contract as lost on my whiteboard, my email chimed. An email from Atlanta Canning. Subject: termination of agreement. I opened it. The words blurred together. "Dear Miss Washington, we have been offered a more competitive rate by Covington Logistics. 30% reduction, effective immediately." Ding. Another email. A local brewery. Ding. A small paper supplier I had fought for months to secure. It was a flood. One after another, my clients were being poached with the same suicidal offer. 30%. This was not business. This was not competition. This was a war of attrition. Jeremiah wasn't trying to win clients. He was trying to destroy mine. He was taking on massive, guaranteed losses on every single contract he stole from me. He was deliberately bleeding his own company dry, solely on the chance that it would bleed me dry faster. He was leveraging his 30 years of reputation in Atlanta, calling in every favor, painting me as the enemy. He was telling them I was unreliable, a cheat who stole her dead husband's money. He was poisoning the well and paying them to drink from it. I looked at my financial projections for the upcoming quarter. 2 weeks ago, this board was full of green projected profit numbers. Now it was a sea of red slashes. 80% of my active contracts gone. I had the $500,000 from the SGLI. Yes, but that was my life insurance, the money Marcus died to give me. It was for my future, for my security. It was not intended to be a war chest to fight his father's insane, suicidal, scorched earth campaign. Jeremiah knew I was a small startup. He was betting that IM Logistics, as a business, could not survive on zero income. He was trying to force me to burn through my insurance money simply to stay afloat. He was strangling me. His voice from that conference room echoed in the empty office. I will grind your little company into dust. I will bleed you dry. He was making good on his promise. He was willing to destroy his own company just to take me down with him. And as I stared at the hemorrhaging numbers, I realized it was working. The phones had finally stopped ringing. There was no one left to cancel. The silence in my small office was heavy, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. I was staring at the whiteboard, at the sea of red ink where my projected income used to be. 80% of my business gone in 2 weeks. Jeremiah was doing it. He was bleeding me dry. The front door of my office suite chimed, then swung open. I looked up, startled. My assistant was working from home, processing the last of the termination notices. It was Denise and Trevor. They didn't knock, they just walked in as if they owned the place. Denise, in a new fur-trimmed coat, surveyed my small, functional office with an expression of profound disgust. "My God," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "It's even sadder than I imagined. Is this what you and Marcus were so proud of? This closet?" Trevor, carrying his sleek leather briefcase, simply smiled. He walked past me, straight to my whiteboard. He tapped the red ink with a polished fingernail. "Tut, tut," he said as if speaking to a child. "That is a lot of red, Imani. That looks terminal. Father-in-law is certainly making a statement, isn't he?" "Get out," I said. My voice was low, tired, but cold. "You are trespassing." "Am I?" Trevor turned, his face a mask of feigned concern. "We are not here to trespass, Imani. We are here as an act of mercy." Denise let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "Mercy? That's a good one, Trevor. He's a saint. My daddy is." "He is," Trevor insisted, taking the chair opposite my desk without asking. He clicked open his briefcase. "He has made his point. He has demonstrated quite clearly that you cannot and will not operate in this city without his approval. He has taken your clients. You are, for all intents and purposes, insolvent." Insolvent. That word again, the same lie he had told the bank. Only this time he had spent 2 weeks and a fortune of his own money to make it true. He slid a single piece of paper across my desk. It was a simple 1-page document, a purchase agreement. "What is this?" "That, Trevor," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "is the most generous offer you will ever receive. Jeremiah has authorized me to buy out IM Logistics, the company name, the servers, the desks. The whole sad affair. He is offering you $10,000 cash. $10,000 for my company, for the future Marcus and I had planned. It wasn't an offer, it was the final humiliation. It was the toe of his boot on my neck." I stared at the paper, unable to form words. Denise leaned forward, planting her hands on my desk. She was relishing this, her eyes bright with venom. "Take the deal, Imani," she hissed. "Take the 10 grand and get out. It's more than this dump is worth. It is certainly more than you are worth." She looked at me, her smile twisting. You're done, you're bleeding out and you know it. Daddy cut your throat in the market and you're just too stupid to lie down and die. That $500,000 windfall you stole, you'll burn right through it trying to fight him. He will never stop. He will follow you to every city and ruin you. She's right, Trevor said, his voice calm and reasonable, the good cop to her bad cop. This is your only exit ramp. This is your white flag. Take the $10,000, take your blood money and get out of Atlanta. Go start over somewhere new. You cannot win against Jeremiah Coynton in his own city. Denise picked up a pen from my desk, my pen, and tapped the signature line on the paper. Sign it, Imani, $10,000. You can be on a bus to, Alabama by nightfall. It is the best deal you are ever going to get. They both stared at me, their faces identical masks of triumph. They had me. I was cornered, strangled, and my company was worthless. They were offering me scraps. I looked at the insulting offer. I looked at their smug, victorious faces, and I remembered the USB drive. I remembered what Marcus had said. He's running it into the ground. Imani, it's a house of cards. I stared at the $10,000 insult on my desk. I stared at Denise's smug, hateful face. I stared at Trevor, the picture of a corporate executioner. Sign it, Imani, Denise urged again, tapping the paper. Lie down and die. You're bleeding out, Trevor said softly. He's bleeding you dry. Bleeding 30%, a war of attrition. My mind flashed not to the insults but to a fact, a cold, hard spreadsheet. It was 3 months ago. The kitchen table. The black USB drive Marcus had given me was plugged into my laptop. I was scrolling through the real books for Coynton Logistics. I was a strategist. I saw patterns. I saw what Jeremiah, an old-school bully, could not. Marcus, I had whispered, my blood running cold as I looked at the numbers. This is so much worse than you said. He had looked up from his coffee, his face grim. I told you. No, I said, pointing at the screen. He's not just in debt. He is floating. He's using the down payment from the Atlanta canning contract to pay the fuel invoices for the regional brewery. He's paying his old driver salaries with the money from the paper supplier. He is not just in debt. This is a Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid. Marcus had nodded, his eyes sad. It's a house of cards, he had said. One strong wind and the whole thing comes down. I snapped back to my office, to Trevor, to Denise, and in that instant I saw the entire picture. The fog of war cleared. Jeremiah was not strong. He was terrified. That 30% discount was not a strategic attack. It was a desperate, final, suicidal gamble. He was not just bleeding, he was hemorrhaging. He was losing catastrophic amounts of money on every single client he stole from me. He was not strangling me. He was strangling himself. He was the one running out of time. He was the one who was truly insolvent. This $10,000 offer. It was not an insult. It was a desperate plea. My presence wasn't what he craved. It was the taste of triumph. He needed to stand before his financiers, his creditors, and declare, "Behold, I've conquered. My rival is vanquished. I remain in command. They didn't arrive to witness my downfall. They came to beg for my salvation." Gazing at their self-satisfied, oblivious visages, I understood their profound miscalculation. They had inadvertently delivered the final blow to their own lineage. My attention drifted to the $10,000 proposal, then to Denise's contemptuous smirk, and finally to Trevor's insincere, serpentine grin. Their conviction was absolute, their certainty of victory unwavering. A sound, unfamiliar and distinct, escaped me. It wasn't a lament nor a sigh of surrender. It was a laugh, a low, dry, chilling chuckle that echoed with a power far exceeding any shriek in the deathly silent chamber. Denise's sneer faltered, She turned to Trevor, bewilderment etched on her face. What do you find so amusing? Have you finally lost your grip on reality? Amusing, I echoed, shaking my head, my gaze lifted from the insulting document, meeting Trevor's eyes. Oh no, there's nothing amusing about this. It's utterly pathetic. I slid the paper back across the polished surface. You truly have no comprehension of what you're doing, do you, either of you? Trevor's smile tightened. I'm aware I'm offering you $10,000 for a company that, as of this morning, has no clients and generates no revenue. It's an act of generosity. I leaned forward, my voice laced with intent. You believe this 30% reduction is a strategic advantage? You see Jeremiah as a king bleeding me dry? You think he's formidable? I rose to my feet, a profound sense of calm washing over me. It was the serenity of absolute conviction. Jeremiah isn't a strong man, Trevor. He's in dire straits. He's not draining me, he's hemorrhaging resources. He's been insolvent on paper for 6 months. He isn't attacking me, he's in a state of panic. Trevor's countenance stiffened. That's a preposterous, slanderous fabrication. Covington Logistics is an enterprise of immense stature. Covington Logistics, I declared, moving towards my whiteboard, is a house of cards, a pyramid scheme. He's been using incoming contract funds to settle outstanding fuel invoices for over a year. He's drowning in debt, and this self-destructive 30% loss you're so proud of? It's not a strategy, it's the final desperate gasp of a man facing oblivion. He's not attempting to dismantle my company. He's trying to deceive his own financial institution into believing he's still a significant player. And you two, in your misguided arrogance, have just walked in here and revealed everything I needed to know. Denise looked bewildered. What are you rambling about? You've lost your mind. I turned to face them. You've been so consumed with obliterating I Am Logistics. You simply assumed. You perceived it as some quaint, sentimental little startup, didn't you? Imani and Marcus? Something small, something easily crushed. I retrieved a black marker and returned to my desk. You, I stated, directing my words to Trevor, are an abysmal financial advisor. In all your due diligence, you never even bothered to ascertain what I am truly signifies. I leaned over the desk, inscribing 2 words directly over the signature line on the $10,000 offer. Ironclad military. I pushed the document back towards him. It doesn't stand for Imani Marcus, I said, my voice dropping to a chillingly low register. It stands for Ironclad Military Logistics. Trevor's gaze was fixed on the inscription. His ashen face revealed the dawning comprehension. Denise merely looked blank. So what? It's a rather uninspired name. It's far more than a name, Denise, I countered. It's a declaration, it's a weapon. It signifies that my enterprise was never designed to contend with your father for local brewery contracts. It was engineered for a domain he cannot even perceive. I turned back to Trevor, whose breathing had become shallow. For the past year, during Marcus's presence, we weren't merely cultivating local connections. We were undergoing rigorous certification. Ironclad Military Logistics is a fully accredited, federally scrutinized, veteran-owned small business. Trevor emitted a faint, choked sound. He grasped the implications. Precisely, Trevor, a VOSB. It's a designation that grants us preferential, high-priority access to the most lucrative, recession-proof contracts available globally. Federal government contracts. The very kind your father-in-law, with his questionable accounting practices and his crumbling pyramid scheme, could never hope to qualify for. Contracts that remain indifferent to whether Jeremiah Covington is bleeding himself dry in the Atlanta private sector. I returned to my desk, swiveling my main 32-inch monitor to face them. The screen displayed an official document adorned with numerous seals. "You've been so exceedingly proud," I said softly, "that Jeremiah managed to pilfer 80% of my local clientele. You've been celebrating, but those clients, they were merely my facade, my small-scale practice. Ultimately, they were expendable." I gestured towards the document on the screen. It was an executed agreement. The letterhead bore the insignia of the United States Department of Defense. "While your father was engaged in catastrophic financial losses, attempting to acquire my $10,000 paper supply contract, IM Logistics was finalizing this, a 5-year exclusive agreement to manage all non-ordnance ground transportation for Fort Benning and Fort Stewart. I allowed them to absorb the final figure displayed at the bottom. It's an $8 million undertaking." The silence that descended upon the room was absolute. Denise's jaw hung agape, her face a pale, slack-jawed tableau of disbelief. The fur trim on her coat seemed to quiver. Trevor was ashen, the hue of chalk. He alternated his gaze between the $8 million sum on the screen, my face, and then back to the screen. He was no warrior. He was a parasite. And in that single horrifying instant, he had realized he had tethered his entire future to a decaying carcass, all while attempting to destroy the sole healthy host in the vicinity. "8," he stammered. "8 million. Trevor was choking, quite literally, on the air. He stumbled backward, his eyes wide with an almost comical horror. "8 million, he repeated, his voice a dry whisper. That cannot be. But Jeremiah is finished," I interrupted, my voice cutting through his disbelief. "And you helped me bring about his end." I glanced at Denise, who remained fixated on the screen, her comprehension utterly lost. You're lying, you're fabricating this." "Am I?" I inquired, retrieving my phone. "Let us review, shall we? Your father has been operating a Ponzi scheme for a year. He was already deeply in debt before Marcus's passing. That USB drive Marcus entrusted to me contained a complete record of his financial transgressions." Trevor sank back into the chair he had occupied with such unwarranted arrogance mere moments before. He looked as though he were about to be physically ill. "He needed a miracle," I continued, "or he needed a scapegoat. When he failed to seize my property, he resolved to destroy my company. But this conflict, this 30% discount, was the most inept, desperate, and suicidal maneuver he could have executed." I began to dial a number on my phone. "While he was hemorrhaging funds he didn't possess," I informed them, "I was securing my $10,000 contracts. My actual contract, the $8 million one, was undergoing its final review with the Department of Defense, and this morning it was publicly filed. It became a matter of public record." Denise's gaze darted to Trevor, her voice a terrified squeak. "Trevor, what does that signify?" Trevor merely stared at the floor, muttering, "Oh my God, oh my God." "It signifies," I stated, "that your father's bank, the same institution holding the loans on every vehicle, every warehouse, and his own residence, has seen it. They've witnessed a new, veteran-owned $8 million logistics enterprise emerge as the dominant force in their city. And they've observed their other client, Jeremiah Covington, suddenly incurring massive financial losses to wage a war he could not possibly win." I held my phone ready. "The bank panicked," I continued. "They finally perceived the pyramid scheme. They recognized the house of cards for what it truly was. And at 10 o'clock this morning, they called his loans, every single one. He had 2 hours to cover his entire line of credit." He could do it," Denise stammered, clinging to a sliver of hope. "He's Jeremiah Covington. He's bankrupt, Denise," I snapped. "Of course he couldn't pay. Jeremiah Covington officially defaulted on his entire commercial debt portfolio at 12:01 p.m. today. I looked down at my phone. You know, he's likely been anxiously awaiting your call all afternoon, Trevor, eager for the good news that you acquired my insolvent company for $10,000. He desperately needs that one minor victory to attempt to persuade some other gullible individual to lend him funds. Shall we give him a call together? I pressed the speakerphone button. The line rang once, twice. Trevor! Jeremiah's voice erupted from the speaker, a desperate, enraged bark. Where have you been? Did she sign it? Is it done? Trevor sat frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a gasping fish. I leaned towards the phone. Hello, Jeremiah. This isn't Trevor. This is Amani. The silence on the other end was profound. I could discern his sharp, panicked breaths. You, he finally whispered. What? What have you done? I'm calling about the $10,000 offer for my company, I stated, my voice clear and frigid. It's rejected. You fool, he began to bluster. But I do have a counterproposal, I continued, cutting him off. I just learned of the devastating news regarding your default. A true shame. Atlanta Federal Trust, the very bank you attempted to turn against me, was deeply perturbed by your delinquency. Consequently, they did precisely what all prudent financial institutions do. They liquidated it. They auctioned off your entire defaulted, worthless debt portfolio this afternoon to the highest bidder. I let the silence linger for 3 deliberate seconds. Denise was weeping now, silent tears coursing down her cheeks. Trevor was rocking back and forth. Who? Jeremiah's voice was a hollow echo. Who purchased it? I Am Logistics did, I replied. Or, as you will soon come to know us, Ironclad Military Logistics, an $8 million federally backed corporation. We acquired it all, Jeremiah. Every truck, every warehouse, the loan on your residence, the entirety of it. No, he whispered. No, you cannot. I am your bank now, Jeremiah, I declared. I own you, and unlike your approach, I have no intention of negotiating. I am not extending mercy. I am calling in the loan. I am foreclosing. I am seizing everything. I terminated the call. My gaze fell upon the 2 shattered, pathetic figures in my office. Leave, I commanded. Exit my premises. 1 month later, the Atlanta air was crisp, but the sun shone brilliantly. Its rays illuminated the grand, ostentatious gold leaf lettering of the Covington Logistics sign, then glinted off a crowbar with a high-pitched shriek of metal being torn from brick. The colossal letter C hung askew, secured by a single bolt. A construction crane, positioned high above, held the slack in its harness. Down on the street, on the public sidewalk, opposite the building they had once possessed, the Covingtons stood. They appeared diminished. They were not a family, but a scattered, broken assembly of refugees. Jeremiah stood apart, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his worn overcoat. He was no longer clad in his powerful tailored suits. He looked disheveled. He simply gazed upward, unblinking, observing the sign, his name, being surgically excised from the skyline. Rosalind was sobbing, not the performative, delicate handkerchief cries from the lawyer's office, but raw, ugly, choking gasps. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled. Jeremiah, she pleaded repeatedly, clutching his arm. Jeremiah, do something, make them cease. Go in there and remind them who you are. He offered no response, not even a glance in her direction. He merely watched as the O came loose. Denise was trembling with an intensity of panic that manifested as a visible sickness. Her fur-trimmed coat had been replaced by a simple jacket. Daddy, she demanded, her voice a shrill squeak. Daddy, why are you just standing there? Call the bank. Call someone. Trevor, she whirled on her husband. Trevor, you're the financial expert. You have to rectify this. This is illegal. Trevor just stared at the ground. He appeared as though he hadn't slept in a month, his face pallid, his eyes vacant. It's legal, Denise," he mumbled, his voice devoid of life. "It's all legal. She owns the debt. She is the bank. It's a foreclosure. It's binding." "What use are you?" Denise shrieked, striking his arm. "What good have you ever been?" A man in a sharp suit, holding a clipboard, emerged from the building, completely disregarding their presence. He barked an instruction to the crane operator. "Easy," he commanded. "I want that entire sign down in one piece. It's going to be scrapped." Rosalind let out a wail. "Scrapped, Jeremiah? He's scrapping your name." A sheriff's deputy, who had been present to maintain order, finally approached them. He was not unkind, but his tone was firm. "Folks, I need you to move along. You cannot stand here. Move along." Jeremiah finally spoke. His voice was not a booming declaration, but a dry, cracking rasp. That was my building." "I'm aware of who you are, sir," the deputy replied, his expression impassive. "And I have a legal order here. The bank," he corrected himself, "the new creditor, Ironclad Military Logistics, has taken possession. You are officially trespassing." As he spoke, another car pulled up. A different man emerged, this one holding a blue-covered legal document. He surveyed the shattered group, then the deputy. "Is this them, the Covingtons?" The deputy nodded. The man approached Jeremiah and Rosalind. "Are you Jeremiah and Rosalind Covington, residents of 14 Gable Ridge Drive?" Rosalind, bewildered by this fresh assault, simply nodded. "Yes, what is it? What now?" The man handed the blue document to Jeremiah. "This is a notice of eviction for your personal residence. The property at 14 Gable Ridge was listed as secondary collateral against the defaulted business loans now held by Ironclad Military Logistics. The new creditor is seizing the asset. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises." The world stopped. Denise, who had been berating Trevor, froze. Her head snapped around. What? What did he say? "Vacate 14 Gable Ridge. That's home." Rosalind's sobs hitched and died in her throat. She looked at the paper in Jeremiah's hand. "The house, our house where we live." She turned to her husband, her eyes wide with a dawning animalistic terror. "Jeremiah, he's talking about our home, not just the company, our home." Jeremiah merely stared at the paper. His hand trembled. He looked up at the man, he looked at the deputy, he looked at the crane, which was now lowering the colossal golden sea of his name onto a flatbed truck. He had lost his company, he had lost his name, and now he had just lost his house. He finally understood. She had not merely defeated him, she had erased him. "He's taking our home!" Rosalind's scream was a thin, terrible sound, a sound of pure primal panic. "Jeremiah, that man is taking our home." Denise had finally turned on her husband. Her grief and shock had found a target. She lunged at Trevor, shoving him hard against the brick wall of the building. You useless, worthless fraud. You said we had her. You said you saw the deed. You said she was broke." I thought she was," Trevor stammered, raising his arms to shield himself from his wife. "Stop right there, Mr. Hayes." The voice was new. It was not the deputy. It was not the process server. The voice was precise, cold, and imbued with authority. A black Mercedes sedan had pulled to the curb. Mr. Patterson, my legal counsel, stepped out. He was no longer the impartial administrator of the will. He was in his wartime attire. He was my lawyer, and he was here to finalize the operation. He adjusted his cuffs and walked past Rosalind and Jeremiah as if they were mere components of the scenery. He stopped directly in front of the trembling, cornered Trevor. "Mr. Trevor Hayes," Patterson stated, his voice slicing through the din. He opened his fine leather briefcase and produced a thick-bound document. A document considerably more voluminous than an eviction notice. He did not hand it to Trevor. He dropped it. It landed on the grimy sidewalk at Trevor's feet with a heavy, definitive thud. Trevor stared at it, too terrified to touch it. "What? What is that?" "That," Patterson explained, "is a civil lawsuit for starters. My client, Ms. Imani Washington, and Ironclad Military Logistics are suing you for tortious interference, slander of business, and commercial libel, specifically concerning the falsified profit and loss statements for IM Logistics that you provided to Atlanta Federal Trust." Denise ceased striking her husband. Her head snapped toward the lawyer, her face a mask of bewilderment. "What, Trevor? What is he talking about?" "Oh, but that's the minor component," Patterson continued, his voice devoid of all emotion. "That document also contains a copy of the official criminal complaint we filed with the district attorney's office this morning, complete with a sworn affidavit from the bank manager at Atlanta Federal Trust." Trevor stopped breathing. "Bank fraud, Mr. Hayes," Patterson stated. "Forgery, the willful creation and submission of falsified financial documents to a federally insured lender in an attempt to trigger a fraudulent foreclosure. It's a federal offense. You attempted to portray my client as insolvent, but all you achieved in your arrogance was to create a permanent legal paper trail of your own felony." Denise looked from the terrifying document on the ground to her husband's chalk-white, sweating face. Trevor, what did you do? What did he say?" A felony?" Trevor remained silent. He slid down the brick wall, his legs giving out, and landed in a seated position on the pavement, his head buried in his hands. He was finished. Rosalind's sobs hitched and died. Her family, her home, her daughter's successful husband, her entire world had just imploded within the span of 5 minutes. And then there was Jeremiah. He had not moved. He had not reacted to the lawsuit. He had not flinched at the words federal prison. He was simply staring. He looked past the lawyer. He looked past his weeping wife and his ruined, hysterical daughter. He looked at the flatbed truck across the street. The crane operator, oblivious to the unfolding human tragedy, had just lowered the final letter, the N of Covington, onto the truck bed. The arrogance had vanished. The rage that had vowed to grind me into dust was gone. The fire in his eyes had been extinguished, leaving only cold, dead embers. He had wagered everything. He had risked his company, his home, his son's legacy, and his family's future, all on a singular core conviction that I, Imani Washington, was weak, foolish, and alone. He had been profoundly mistaken. Slowly, mechanically, he turned his back to the building. He did not look at his wife. He did not look at his daughter. He did not look at his son-in-law, who was now weeping into his hands on the sidewalk. He simply began to walk. "Jeremiah!" Rosalind cried out. "Jeremiah, where are you going? Don't leave us." He just kept walking, an empty suit, a broken old man. He walked past the deputy, past his own car, and continued down the street, an erased individual with nowhere left to go. The office remained the same, yet everything had transformed. The heavy, dark, oppressive drapes that Jeremiah favored were gone. I had them incinerated. Sunlight, bright and unfiltered, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the vast, empty expanse. It caught the grain of the massive mahogany desk. My desk. I stood by the glass, observing. Far below on the street, life continued its course. People ambled, cars moved. They were utterly unaware that a conflict had been waged and won directly above their heads. High on the building's facade, a team of installers on a crane was securing the final letter. It was brushed steel, not gaudy gold. It was strong, clean, and permanent. The new sign was in place, Ironclad Military Logistics. It covered the fresh brick scars where the name Covington had been brutally torn away. I turned from the window. The office was empty save for a single object. I walked to the desk and retrieved the sole item I had placed upon it. It was the large, silver-framed photograph from my mantelpiece, the one Denise had thrown face down into the mud. I had meticulously cleaned the frame myself. I had replaced the shattered glass. Marcus's smile, captured in his uniform, was radiant, his arm clasped tightly around me. We looked so happy, so blissfully unaware. I traced the silver edge with my thumb. They truly believed I was merely the grieving widow, I whispered to the picture. They thought I was vulnerable. They saw me merely as an inconvenience, the weeping girl caught in a downpour, someone they could easily discard like refuse. A subtle, weary yet potent smile graced my lips. They overlooked whom you wed, Marcus. You did not wed a victim. You wed a master of organization. You wed a tactician. I returned the photograph to the heart of the desk, oriented towards me, towards this new epicenter of authority. They attempted to seize our home. They endeavored to obliterate our enterprise. They sought to obliterate you. I inhaled deeply, yet I shielded it. I safeguarded our inheritance. It is secure now. We are secure. The installation crew's crane began its descent. The task was complete. I circled the substantial desk and gazed at the expansive black leather CEO's seat, Jeremiah's seat. At long last I occupied it. My fingers traced the polished arms. It felt precisely right. I pivoted the chair, leaving the past in my wake, and turned towards what lay ahead. I faced the window. I faced the entirety of the Atlanta cityscape. This was not a metropolis that had vanquished me. This was a city poised, awaiting, and I was prepared to command it. This narrative serves as a potent admonishment to never dismiss an individual who appears subdued or shattered. The Cointons perceived a woman lost in sorrow. They failed to recognize the scrupulously prepared strategist Marcus had chosen. They depended on ostentatious, haughty intimidation, while Imani relied on silent, deadly preparedness. Genuine fortitude lies not in the clamor you generate. It resides in the unyielding actions you implement when unobserved. Their critical misjudgment was presuming her sorrow rendered her feeble. It merely sharpened her resolve. Have you ever faced the necessity of retaliating against someone who misjudged your capabilities? Chronicle your tale of exquisite retribution in the forum below.